There is nothing on at 2 in the morning anymore. There used to be. You couldn't sleep, you came downstairs, you turned the television on. Nothing except a man in a sweater, extremely excited about a machine that dried food. And you watched the whole thing. So did the house across the street. Same blue light in every window. All of you sure you were the only one. The man who invented all of this went broke the same year they made it legal. You know his work even if the name means nothing to you. Ron Popeil, the pocket fisherman. Mr. Microphone, which was a toy that put your voice on the radio, and whose commercial was a young man driving slowly past a woman and calling out to her. That one has not aged. The gadget your mother kept in the drawer by the sink and used twice. That was him too. In January of 1984, the bank called in the loan and took everything. The warehouses, the stock, the molds, all of it. So he went down to the auction where they were selling off his own products, and he bought them back. And then he did the thing he had done 20 years before any of it. He stood at a county fair, behind a folding table, in front of 30 people, and sold them a kitchen gadget. 5 months later, the rule changed. Remember him, he comes back. Here is the rule. Until that summer, a station could only sell so many minutes of advertising in an hour. So a half-hour-long commercial, pretending to be a program, had nowhere to go. In June of 1984, they took the limit off. And every station in America woke up owning something it could suddenly sell. The hours nobody wanted. 1 in the morning, 2, 3, they sold it. And this is what moved in. The first man to work out what to do with all that empty air was going bald. The first version of the ad was a proper ad. Attractive people doing active things, pleased about their hair. Nothing happened. So somebody at Hair Club for Men made a decision that no agency would sign off on now. They put the owner on camera. A balding man in his 40s with a mustache, standing in front of a plain gray background, looking straight at you. And he said the line you can probably still say word for word. "I'm not only the Hair Club president, I'm also a client." 10,000 people picked up the phone that first month. Not because they believed him, because he was the first one who hadn't pretended. Hold on to that. It was the last time anybody bothered. If you're back when in the early 80s, you saw this one. A cream you rubbed into the place that hurt, and underneath it the promise. The strong relief of aspirin, right where you need it. Your mother had a tube in the bathroom cabinet, second shelf, next to the plasters. You can probably still smell it before the cap is off. There was no aspirin in it. Not a little. Not a version of it. None. Not one grain in the whole tube. Some people swore by it anyway. They were not wrong to feel better. It just wasn't the aspirin because there wasn't any. And that was something you rubbed on. Some of it you had to hang from. There was a doctor in California who decided the trouble with the human body was that it spent too much of its life the right way up. So he sold you boots with hooks on them. You clamped them to a bar in a doorway, and then you hung upside down in your own living room by your ankles for your back. No warning, no doctor to ask first, nothing at the bottom of the screen in small letters. A man on television telling you to hang your spine upside down and a phone number to call about it. By 1982, people were spending $70 million a year on this. Somebody's father did it. Possibly yours. The blood in your face, the wallpaper the wrong way up, the smell of the carpet 6 inches from your hair. At least the boots did one thing, the next one claimed to do everything. There was a man who sold bee pollen, capsules, powder, tablets on television after midnight. The bee pollen cured your allergies. It also reversed aging. It also made you lose weight, permanently, without trying. And it also gave athletes an enormous increase in stamina. All of that, out of the same jar, at the same time. Nobody stopped him for most of the decade, which means that for years, a man could sit in your living room at 1:30 in the morning and tell you that pollen would make you young again. And the thing is, at 1:30 in the morning, that is not the worst thing you have ever heard. None of it, though, came close to the man with the boat. If you saw it once, you never lost it. A man on the deck of a yacht, then in front of a mansion, then leaning on a sports car. And around him at all times, young women in swimsuits who had very clearly been told where to stand. And he shouted at you, He told you your friends were losers. He told you that if you stayed on that sofa, you would die on that sofa. And then he invited you to a free seminar. 90 minutes, no obligation. Come and find out how he did it. The free seminar existed to sell you a bigger seminar. The biggest one was a week in Orlando, and it cost $16,000. Nobody stopped him for years. Florida started asking questions eventually, and somebody sued him in California. But by then, it had run and run and run. And some of you wrote the number down. Not to call it, just in case. He shouted at you from a boat, and it worked. The next one never raised his voice, and he took far more. The biggest one of all had a film star in it. If you watched television in the 60s, you knew Robert Vaughn, the man from U.N.C.L.E., a real actor, a real career, an Oscar nomination sitting behind him. And then from 1985, there he was at 2 in the morning, in a good suit, in a chair, explaining a treatment for hair loss. He wasn't shouting. That was the whole point of him. He talked to you the way a doctor talks to you. People sent in $100 million. It didn't work. Not in any way anybody could ever measure. And then in 1993, a reporter asked Robert Vaughn about it. He didn't apologize. He didn't say he'd been misled. He said it was about the most profitable thing he had ever done in his life. And then he explained why, which was that every single call that came in on that 800 number, he got a piece of it. That was one man selling one thing. Somebody was about to work out you could sell 3. This is where it stops being funny. One company made 3 of them, one after another, at the end of the decade. The first sold a patch you stuck on your skin that was going to make you thin without you doing anything at all. The son of the President of the United States came on and told you about it. The second sold something to bring your hair back. The third sold something for impotence. 3 products. And if you have ever been awake at 2 in the morning, you know exactly what a man lies there thinking about. They were not selling 3 things to 3 people. They were selling to the same man on 3 different nights. And the ordinary people in those ads, the ones who came on and said it had worked for them, the ones who looked like somebody from your street, were not strangers to the company. That is what the government finally went after them for. Not only that it didn't work, that the honest faces had been arranged. All of that was sold to people who wanted something. The next one was sold to people who needed something. One of these became the most repeated sentence of the decade, and almost nobody remembers what it was actually selling. A button on a cord you wore around your neck. If you went down and you couldn't get to the phone, you pressed it, and a voice came into the room. The woman in the ad was Mrs. Fletcher. She was played by a woman named Edith Four, and they picked her for a reason. She had actually fallen in her own house. She had hit her head, and one of these things had brought help to her. Within a year, the line was on t-shirts. Comedians used it. Children shouted it across playgrounds. By 1990, you could say it anywhere in America, and every single person knew it. It was a real product. It worked. It was for people exactly like the woman who said the line. And the whole country repeated it for 10 years without once thinking about that. Nobody would cut an ad like that the same way now. Not the fall, not the way she said it, not the way they held on her face. She died in 1997. It was a fall. There is one more thing that came out of that morning in 1984, and it didn't happen at 2 in the morning. It happened at 8 o'clock on a Saturday, because the limit came off children's television at the same time. In 1983, there were 13 cartoons on American television built around a toy. By 1988, there were more than 70. He-Man, Transformers, My Little Pony, Care Bears. And you were not the child in this. You were the one in the kitchen with the radio on, listening to it through the wall. Those were not programs with commercials in them. The program was The Commercial. 22 minutes of a toy your child did not own, every Saturday, for free. And then a birthday would come around, and you would be the one standing in a shop doing the arithmetic. Nobody told you the rules had changed. There was no announcement. It happened 2 years earlier in a room in Washington, and it simply arrived in your house on a Saturday morning. It ended in 1990. In October, the limits went back on children's television, and it was finished. 6 years, June to October, start to end. And in 1991, Ron Popeil came back. Half an hour on cable for a machine that dried food. $80 million of them. He went broke the year it began. He was still selling the year after it ended. The rules changed twice. You were awake either way. So which one was yours? Not the one you bought, the one you sat all the way through. Tell us in the comments, especially the one we missed.